Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Numbers. It's our special edition of Talking Numbers Mastering Profit series brought to you by Profit Master Global Outsourcing. It's the guys behind me, which is lovely to have them on board and more importantly, to share all the information that we've been sharing with you. If you missed the first 4 episodes of this 5-part series, my name is Paul Jantz, and it's been really, really good to have these conversations because I suppose following from a CPA discussion group that I presented at, and I talked to a lot of different firms about growing and growth. And I suppose that's a part of my background. My background has been very much a part of growth businesses, doing it myself, and also coaching a number of accounting firms to key growth strategies. So it's been great to sit down, talk about growth number 1, talk about growth in terms of profit number 2. Richard Croker, welcome back. Welcome back to our Talking Numbers Mastering Profit series. How are you?
Good. I can't believe this is the final one.
Yeah, it is. It's our series 1. We can close off and start working on series 2, which is always exciting.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I tell you, it's been interesting as we get around to talk with the firms that we meet along the way, and just the amount of interest in outsourcing and how it can apply to their firms. It's really been a number of interesting discussions that we've had along the way.
I would agree. And that was evident in I think in a lunch we ran here in Melbourne only a few weeks ago. And the end of the table that I was at, they were all doing exactly that. And they were speaking very highly off the models as well.
Just so you know, 3 of those firms have actually engaged with us, which is just tremendous. Yeah.
Outstanding. Look, let's look to wrap up this series. One of the things I want to talk about is I want to run through some, let's call it some practical examples of cost savings. I want to look at some of our, how we can start to share a little bit more about, again, the people model strategy. I want to talk about that. I want to bring in some of the stuff I spoke about at that CPA conference as well and get your thoughts on all of that. And then touch on, and I know we've already spoken about this, but we've spoken about things like the talent pool. We've touched on their qualifications. I want to go into that a little bit more detail as well. So the firms that have been following this series can have more information that they can take away and start building out a strategy there. Let's call it their new people model strategy. Look, I've always believed that, the people model has always been the key element. And if we can get our people model right, together with our culture, and we can grow a very, very strong business. So I'm still a little bit concerned if the skill shortages here in Australia. Do you feel that's a concern?
Everywhere we go, it's everybody is talking about that, and it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. I was speaking with one of our audit clients we've got a group of auditors in the Philippines. And traditionally, they had actually had people coming in from overseas during the audit season, and they would come and be going to the universities and work with the audit firm during that period. They're not seeing that the people will be coming back to Australia. Those students, they're not seeing that they're going to be coming back to Australia for a while. More interestingly, and particularly for the outsourcing model, the skills being developed by that firm to provide audit staff offshore to be able to be doing auditing onshore has really developed. This year, I'm just thinking now, there's probably 4, I think there's about 4 or 5 in that team for that particular firm in the audit division. And of them, 4 of them have been out to Australia. 3 of them have been out to Australia during this year's audit season. They've come out and they've been able to spend a couple of months working with their counterparts here in Australia. And at the beginning of October, they actually went back, and they're still continuing their work over there. But that's been incredibly a really interesting experience to see how that particular firm has been able to manage the talent shortage by using offshore people, bringing them in here for training and mentoring and stuff like that, and then being able to put them back overseas to be able to continue doing what they're doing week in, week out, month in, month out, and so on. So I think the talent shortage is here to stay. We talked in, I think it was the last podcast, about the number of people going into university to study professional accounting is actually decreasing. So, I think in the next few years we're going to see how that's going to unfold.
100%, and I think we've spoken about that on previous shows or whatever it may be, with regards to the let's call it the lack of people coming through. Whether our industry is still considered sexy, but there is there's a lack of people coming through. So what does it look like in 5 years' time if we know the amount of jobs in if it's not every accountant, it's definitely every second firm that I speak to, they always say to me, "Oh, by the way, PJ, if you know people, I'm looking for people." These sorts of things. Certainly managers are a lot harder to find. Spoke to a firm last week that said, "Oh, look, PJ, what do you think of the strategy of paying them more money? If they're a $90,000 resource, should I be paying them 110?" And we sort of tossed around the pros and cons to that as well. There are pros and there are cons. So interesting. That's sort of where people are forced to look at. But that's just then, in my opinion, then eating into your profit as well.
We're seeing the same thing in the Philippines, Paul, where people are going from one company to another simply because they can get more money, and firms are throwing more money at them. So they're taking those positions. And I've had cases with, clients of mine and accounting friends of mine where somebody's gone in for a very short period of time, and then just around the corner, they've been offered more money, so they'll go and take the more money. That's not only a skills shortage, but there is a cultural problem there as well.
Correct.
And, the finders, grinders, minders model relies on the grinders becoming minders who become finders. And if they're just changing from one place to another, it's going to be really hard for those people to, in my view, it will be hard for those people to get the skills necessary to grow in the profession, to get to float to the top. If they're simply changing jobs all the time, there's money, but this profession is also about skill and professionalism.
Yeah, no, I agree totally, mate. So just quickly to come back and touch on a couple of things that we covered off on a couple of previous episodes. You spoke about the talent pool. So the talent pool where you are, and from memory, you're in Clark. What's the talent pool like?
So if you consider that the Philippines is about 110 million people, that'll give you that'll give you a perspective of the size of the population compared to Australia. Within the area that we're in, so there are a number of what they call freeport zones around the country. There's Clark, where we're based. Subic Bay is another one. Bonifacio Global City, Taguig is another one. Mindanao, Cebu, all of these provide special zones. The interesting thing about Clark is that it is a very high technology zone. It has an international airport flying in from Singapore. You can fly, and I do this, I fly direct from my house on the Gold Coast. I fly to Singapore, I have a rest and a glass of beer, and I hop on the plane and then go straight to Clark. And our office is located about 10 minutes from the international airport. That's give you a perspective of how close we are. Yeah. And then within that area, there are about 27,000 people who are working in this sector. And then a lot of them are actually working in the overnight area, so America, UK, but there's an increasing number of them, and it's increasing because of our needs here in Australia. There's an increasing number of them who are working day shifts for Australian companies. And it's desirable for people in that area to come and work for a day shift, because they get the way it works is they start at 6:30 in the morning, they're finished at 3:30, and they get time to spend with their families. Whereas overnight, they don't necessarily have that same experience. So of the 27,000, I'm estimating there's probably 7,000 of them or more who are working in the true BPO sector. And what I mean by that is business process outsourcing, so accounting and administrative functions and so on. And within that area, there's a substantial number of those who are working in the Australian sector. And this is largely accountants, legal secretaries, financial planning assistants, loan processing, bookkeeping, that sort of customer service type roles. It's a big area, and if you consider, then as I said, I'm here on the Gold Coast right now. There are 500,000 people who live on the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
You're talking like 5% of the whole population of the Gold Coast are engaged in the BPO sector or in the offshoring sector worldwide in just the area that I'm in the Philippines.
Amazing.
Big topic.
And you mentioned financial planning before, so that's another interesting sector as well, like the auditing sector that went through probably, I don't know, maybe it was 10, 12 years ago now, where there was a number of, they changed the qualifications and a lot of auditors left the industry, and similar to now with the financial planning industry, thousands have left because of the increased qualifications. So again, there's a shortage of people. So and I know you engaged a person for a firm that we work with as well.
Yeah. Well, just take that firm, for example. I mean, one of the things we're seeing in financial planning is that the skill that Australian paraplanners have, for example, is not a skill that's easily translated into somebody who's already over in the Philippines. And I think there's a lesson there for the accounting profession where people in financial planning have actually taken somebody who has some financial planning skills per se, and then actually training them into the Australian way of doing things. Like even in the use of the Xplan software, it's not so long ago that financial planners here in Australia are saying we definitely need somebody who's got Xplan experience. Well, the availability of good, solid Xplan experience is not that easy in the Philippines. But planners are turning around and saying, well, hang about, we can actually train these people into our role. In the loan processing area, mortgage broking, we've actually got our team going through Certificate 4 in mortgage broking to get our people to grow as in Australian experience. So during the time that they're working with us, they're actually studying for Australian qualifications. It's the same thing with our accountants. And I think that accountants are only now realising this, that you can engage a graduate level, 1 to 2 years experience Filipino who may actually be qualified as a CPA. And I know that was one of the things that we wanted to talk about, but the Certified Practicing Accountants Association of the Philippines provides a qualification, a CPA qualification, that should not be discounted compared to the professional qualification that we have here. And these young guys are easily adaptable into the Australian way of accounting. So to put some money around that, you're actually hiring a young graduate level to 1 year accountant, 2 years maybe, for a little over $30,000 a year. You're then training them into good, solid intermediates very quickly using the training programs that you've got internally, coupled with the training programs that we provide. They grow very quickly to the level that they need to be. And what you end up with is a solid, loyal intermediate who wants to grow with the firm. And that's where I think there's a great opportunity for accounting firms. If they've got the training, nurturing and mentoring capability for teams, for graduates and intermediates here in Australia, the same thing can be interposed into growing those people in the Philippines.
Yeah, well said, well said. And the qualifications they hold seem to be very, very good qualifications, aren't they?
There wouldn't be a single person in our financial services area, so that covers accountants, bookkeepers, accounting administrative staff, loan processors, financial planners or paraplanners, and financial planning administration staff. Within those, there would not be a single person in any of those teams that does not have a degree, a university degree. In the accounting division, and I'm probably just picking a number out of the air, but I suspect a third of them are qualified CPAs.
Right. Okay.
So,
and is that encouraged?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. doing the CPA exams over there is slightly different to what happens here in Australia. They call it a license exam or a licensure exam. And so they leave university and then go into the license exam. They work very, very hard to be able to get that license. It's outside of work hours when they have to do it. It takes a lot of after hours study to be able to do it. But when they get there, they are very highly respected in the profession over there. And, you know, as a result, they've got the commitment to be able to do the same thing here. And they want to be able to do it. They want to grow in international careers.
Yes.
And that's what we're able to offer them.
Yeah,
so
brilliant.
We encourage getting the CPAs, and they want to work with people like the companies that, you know, like me and our people.
Yes. Mate, over the next 10 minutes or so, let's say it's 7 to 10 minutes, what I want to tap into is really getting to all of our listeners in terms of strategies concerned. Is there I'm going to start proposing, is there a better way in terms of a future people model? Okay, so we started this talking about growth. We started talking about growth or mastering profit through people, and thinking about what your future people model could look like. And this is probably something that I'd love you to all that are listening to this to just challenge yourself. And if we go back to, I think it was the episode previously or the one before that, where we were talking about the minder, finder, grinder. And we spoke about in particular the ability for your little pyramid. The top of the pyramid was your finders, the middle section were your minders, and the bottom section were your grinders. So probably again, just to touch on this really quickly, Rich, who should be the finders of work? Let's say our finders.
Well, as we said, typically they are your partners. And your minders might be your managers and your partners, and your grinders are your younger people in the organisation. But I think the point we should make, and we did do this as we went through, is that just because we were referring to the size of the pyramid, that there are less finders than there are minders, and then a lot more grinders. But that's how an accounting firm works. That's simply how it works. But they are equally as important. People are equally as important.
Yeah, correct. And that's probably where, again, you've got the ability to, again, challenge your model to those grinders. And if you've got people that, in my experience of dealing with team members of accounting firms, is that they don't want to do the low-level work. Okay, so if you can get your grinding model changed, where they're doing grinding work at a lower level but still charging out at a normal rate, bang, there's profit there. Then the people that have freed up capacity can move up, and they can probably be, again, your minders. So you got to think about how you can challenge the model moving forward. We just spoke about that. It's going to be interesting in 3-5 years' time to all the lack of people coming through. This is where I want you to ideally to think about how you can challenge that model, which is important. So thanks for running through that. Finders, minders, grinders. One of the things that I've spoken about in the past, and get your thoughts on this, is going to be important as well, in terms of, I talk about profit centers. And I've sometimes done this in the past to say, and I've done it with team members to say, well, let's look at all the different profit centers in terms of our people and then our work. So there's two different ways that you can look at this. And what are the, again, if we looked at if we were looking at growth, and let me give you an example. So we're looking at growing a particular firm, and I'll actually give you an example of a firm that I actually spoke with last week about this. They're Melbourne-based, wanted to grow, not really sure how to grow. So I sort of challenged him in certain areas and how you can start getting greater, let's call it returns or returns on investment. So then it adds to our profit margins. And I gave him an example too. And I asked him to run through his firm. Yeah, look, they've got some self-managed super funds. They do a lot of different tax and compliance work. They've got individuals as well. But I asked him, where do you feel that you could get the most amount of profit out of the future of what you're trying to do? And he said, well, the one that I can easily start working with is something like self-managed super funds. I said, okay, good. I don't disagree. And I think this is a good opportunity. I said, so what does the ideal person look like that has a self-managed super fund? So we went through that. We almost created a little avatar of them and said, right, so where do they work? So this is the great part about it. So if you're running through, this is a little exercise or a little training session you can even run with team members. Where do they work? And we ended up, just to fast forward, we ended up talking about, well, let's look at niche little markets. Let's look to attract high net worth individuals. So whether it was in that allied health area, as an example, physios, chiros, whether it be even doctors, so they're people that are earning good money again, maybe running their own business. We know they're earning good money. Dentists, again, another one in that category. And do they have a self-managed super fund set up? So again, looking at that as a really good example to maybe, and this is probably where you come into it, Rich, to how, from a strategy perspective, if a firm said, yes, I want to focus on self-managed super funds, how they could have a specific person that can work for their firm just to do self-managed super funds. So they're not doing anything else but self-managed super funds. So you know exactly what your cost is. You know what you can charge your client. The rest is profit. What's your thoughts on that, Rich?
Look, in an accounting practice, niche can be so powerful. We've seen that with some incredible firms that have developed over the years where they've taken a niche and grown that into very large practices. Medical is a very good example. But just coming back to the people side of that, you're right. I'll just use the SMSF example again. When you're looking for your talent, you can be looking for that talent and in a generalist sense, or you can look at it in a specialist sense. Now,
yes.
in an accounting firm, when we talk in a generalist sense, we talk about somebody who does tax returns and financial statements and depreciation considerations, whatever. And then there are some specializations within that, and superannuation tends to be a specialization there. And I'll tell you another one, by the way. Insolvency is another one, which is my own particular area. That's a specialization as well.
Yep.
What we've done in the Philippines is that using the example that I told you about before, we're finding young accountants who are capable within themselves, and then growing them into the niche. So if it's superannuation, for example, we're growing them into the superannuation niche. If it's insolvency, we're growing them into the insolvency niche. Auditing's a little bit different because we need to have some level of experience when we bring them on. So we're tending to get our auditors out of the top 4 firms, like the big 4 firms, and they're coming over to work with us. And that's an interesting dynamic as to why they do it, by the way. To get the young guys and grow them into that niche is a very good way for us to be able to do it. But when you're talking about that, the accountant has got to say, this is not a 6-month exercise. It's a 1-year exercise. It's not a short-term exercise. You grow them into that role. But the price that you're paying for the staff member, providing you can give them the mentorship and the nurturing here in Australia, they will grow into that quickly and it will pay you back so well. Now, we've also done it the other way as well, where we've poached staff from other firms, and I'm specifically using the superannuation example, where we poached a staff member from another firm to put them into a team specifically relating to superannuation. It's working very well. The staff member is a good staff member and the client is very happy with it, but they're also paying very handsomely for it as well, because we had to take them and drop them into a role. So yes. it just depends. Yeah,
good point.
But the niche goes both ways. The niche at the selling area and the niche at the service area, they're both important.
Yeah, good. And I suppose the challenge to everyone listening as we look to wrap up this 5th episode of this series, I want you to think about that and take that into a strategy session to say, what could we do? But try and be specific as possible. It's a bit like, if I give you the analogy, if you want to go and buy a new car, your goal is to buy a new car. Well, what sort of car do you want? A BMW. Well, okay, what sort of BMW? Okay, I want an X3. Okay, what color do you want? So you can be as specific as you want rather than just saying, I want to buy a new car, because that's very broad. So the more specific you can be, it gives you the ability to work into those profit centers of how you can actually make that work. And that gives the ability, someone like Profit Master, the ability to find the right person to suit your needs to deliver what they need to deliver on. So
one of the things we do on that, Paul, sorry, I didn't mean to. One of the things that we do is, we talked about this earlier, is the champion. Well, the champion has to be able to tell the recruiter or the recruitment department. So within our business, we've got a recruitment department, an HR department, and an operations department, all the usual things that you would see in an organization. But within the recruitment department, they need to get a really close handle on the staff member that you want. And the more detailed you can give them about the color of the car and the add-ons to the car that you can give to them, the better it is, and the more likely it is that you're going to be able to really get the staff member to fit the niche that you want.
Well said. Well said. Parting comment? Do you have a parting comment before we wrap up, mate?
Paul, I've enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure to spend some time with you. We do we're lucky we do get the chance to spend time together quite regularly. And when we can talk in depth about what we do, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I can only say to you and your guests and listeners that Profit Master is an organisation that we are ready and able to provide resources to you. And you just have to ask the questions. We're open. We've got a great team to talk to you about any questions that you might have. And perhaps you can let us know through Paul if you're interested. We'd be very happy to talk to you.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Look, I think the information that has been provided in this series, and to be fair, they've only been half an hour. We've gone over a little bit more than half an hour right now, but they're only half an hour little snippets. So the ability for all you guys that are listening to this or watching this to share, to review, to go over again, so many little golden nuggets that you can take away and add, and probably challenge yourself and challenge the rest of your management team to what we can start doing better. And I believe if you've got that mindset of always searching for how you can improve, I call it the Anthony Robbins is always the constant and never ending improvement, as he calls it. If you're constantly looking to how you can improve, that's always a great mindset to how you can grow, not only as an individual, but then also as a business. So please make sure that you take everything that we've said, take one or two, or take the 30 that we've given you as well, and hopefully you can apply it to all of your businesses. Richard Croker, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a wonderful series. Again, your experience, your knowledge, your know-how. I certainly appreciate everything that you've shared and everything you've had to share to everybody today as well, and over the series of these 5 episodes of our Series 1. Look out for Series 2 as we continue to share information with you. Hope you've enjoyed our Talking Numbers Mastering Profit series. Until I talk to you next, see you soon.
See you, Paul.
Thanks, Richard.
Join us at Profit Master. Passionate people, passionate career.